it up.
Hey, what's up, you guys? Welcome to the ultimate Yamaha MT-09 signal guide. Well, I hope this will be the ultimate signal guide for you guys. Maybe there will be some other information out there on the interwebs that you could also take advantage of, but here at TST Industries, we've already removed the fender off this bike, replaced it with our TST Industries Fender Eliminator, and I know a lot of you guys will want to know what to do about replacing the signals on that setup with our parts. So this is what I'm here to do. I'm going to break this down for you. I know it may seem intimidating to see all these parts here, but they are just for my demonstration purposes, and each installation of each signal set is actually really simple. I will go through those installation steps in just a little bit. First, I want to talk about what we're doing here. Obviously, when you ditch the fender off the bike, you remove the mounting points for your stock signals. Stock signals are actually pretty nice on this bike, so some guys will want to go ahead and remount those on the bike with the fender eliminator. Now, on our rear mount fender eliminator, that is totally possible. You can couple up your fender eliminator purchase with one of these brackets. Comes like this with 2 extra screws that replace the screws that mount the license plate bracket to its boss, and that screws to the bike. And this is the exact geometry that holds these signals via their OEM mounting onto the bike. And then you just plug them in, you run them through the undertail closeout, no big deal. This is actually what it looks like when you have a signal mounted on here. This is an R1 signal, slightly different, but all the Yamaha signals share the same geometry here. All right, what if you don't want the long stalks and you want something a little bit more elegant, still LED? Well, we've got you covered, but how do I put this on my bike? Well, it really depends how you have your bike configured. We have the rear mount fender eliminator and the low mount fender eliminator. There will be some differences in how you mount all these parts on the bike, so the installation steps will vary. I will just introduce some of the signals that we'll be working with, and then we'll talk about how to install them. Here we have our echo signals. These are CNC machined aluminum black anodized. They have one very high power Cree style LED firing through a lens array. Even though it's one LED, it's super bright. So they do provide ample brightness. The cone of light is just not as broad as from emitters such as this one or this one. But if you like these, they also have the ability to change this little ring here. You see the silver ring. That's what comes stock or by default from us in a box. And if you want to include these rings, they're very inexpensive and they provide a nice little touch of class. See, we have the blue mounted on this one. This is the signal lamp that we'll be mounting on this bike. The blue actually matches the blue on the SP here really nicely. That's what we'll do. Here we have the BL6. I want to say this is our most popular signal variant. It's very stylish, very minimal. It kind of disappears into the bike when you consider all the different geometry going on here. You put these on, they kind of disappear until you fire them up. They are very bright, 6 LEDs on board. They are firing through a nice lens array that we've designed here. Packaging's really nice, does have our logo on it, kind of textured, really nice and simple. A lot of people really like this. Oh, I didn't mention yet, these are available in a choice of clear or lightly smoked lens. The light smoke really does take down and mutes down the little brilliance of the lens elements, but still packs a nice brightness punch because we don't really attenuate the brightness output all that much. Just a little tint, black LED board, no problem. Here you see the Arrow 18, they are in the shape of an arrow. They do have a 10mm stud, so they are not able to be coupled with some of the different mounting styles that we will be showing you. I think at this point in 2021, I'm kind of on the tipping point of maybe deciding to discontinue these. I don't know yet. We still sell plenty of them, They're still very simple and nice, but if you're watching this in 2025, maybe they're not around anymore, but at the very least, they are 10mm studs. If you're looking for signal options and how to install them on this bike and you're not shopping with us, you're just using this video as an info guide, these will help you anyway, and that will make me happy. All right, that's pretty much it for what we have in store right now as far as the signals go. Now, how do we connect them electrically into the bike? All these signals are terminated in 3.5mm male bullet connectors, and that's because we adapt them to many different bikes via the use of our harness converters. OEM style connector on one side, female bullets on the other. Insulating sheaths, very simple. Yellow to yellow, black to black, plug it into the bike, make sure these guys don't slip off. I'll show you how to do that, no problem. Fire it up, good to go. These come as a set of 2. You don't have to buy them individually. If you buy one set, it does the entire rear signaling portion on this bike. Now, physical mounting to the bike. Like I said, many different options depending on rear mount, front mount. So we will consider that during our installation. I'll just breeze through it pretty quickly here. We do sell this thing called the Pod Signal Mounting Kit. Comes with hardware and also L brackets. You attach your L bracket to the back of your license plate and the license plate bracket, and then you have a mounting point for your signal. These are also handy when installing the low mount system to the undertail. Same kit, slightly different installation method. I'll show you how to do that. Last installation method that we will be going through is using an 8mm stud signal such as this or this on this location here. If you back this out, this actually has a through hole through it, and we'll show you what that looks like on there and how to install it. Now, I would not recommend installing the longer signals in this location because throwing your leg over, you may hit it, you may damage it. These are actually better suited for this location because they're low profile and they sit under the edge of the seat here. But ultimately, you will do what you want to do. We'll just show you how to do what you're wanting to do. Freedom means choice, and that's what we provide here. We also make very nice parts, if you're asking me. Hopefully you guys agree. And we like to enable you to install these things at home so you don't have to drive around, drop the bike off, pick it up. And in the end, that makes me happy. So let's make me happy. Let's go over to the bike, start wrenching. Let's do it. The first version of signal installation we'll be going through is the OEM signal relocation onto our rear mount kit. It's fairly simple. Fender's already off. If you need help with those steps, they are contained in our Fender Eliminator videos. Flip this guy over and find the mounting system for our Yamaha signal kit. Very simple. They have a plastic piece that jams these windows here on these rubber boots. You peel out the plastic piece and that frees the rubber boot. All we have to do is grasp the rubber boot from the outside, turn it and peel it out, and now signal's removed. Repeat the steps on the other side. Now the only thing holding these signals still is the bracket and the shroud here. For the rear shroud, what we can do is spread the steel members and pop up on the shroud here. These guys are just routed through here. Peel them out, and then we'll need to grab a 5mm Allen to undo these screws here. Once we have our fasteners out, this should just all come apart pretty easily. We can potentially remove more fasteners from here to get the steel bracket out, make it a little bit easier, but I just find it easy enough to snake the wires through. Now, before we remove all this stuff, let's take a look at what color plug goes where. Right should be white. And in fact it is. This will just make reassembly easier on the bike. Black is left. Now, these guys have intermediate boot extenders here. What I like to do is remove all this stuff and put only the signals on our bracket. If you want the extra length, you can go ahead and keep the extenders. I tend to just steer around that. Have to get the jamming piece out. This jamming piece will actually slip off the wire. All this stuff here, this one will not. So, in fact, what we're gonna do is ditch this one and get rid of the boot. And the boot can actually come off. Pretty large connectors here. And now we're left with the actual boot on the signal that will jam it in place here in this geometry. The jamming piece will be the one that stays on, doesn't have a split. It's a little bit stronger than this split one. I'll repeat that for the other side signal. Okay. Now, white is right. So that goes on the right side here, and the smaller diameter of this cutout goes to the front of the bike, larger one to the rear. Feed this through, get our jamming piece through, get our signal seated, obviously pointing the right direction. The larger diameter of the boot has a split in it, so I like to use that at the end. Jam the other end in first and use the split end to finish up. Makes the assembly a little bit easier. Once you get it in here, you have to make sure that it's actually distributed properly and that the groove in the boot is fitting around the entire bracket. And then we'll get our jamming piece in place, and there's really only one way to seat this. So let's get that done now. And we just make sure that these rubber boot interference windows actually have part of the plastic from the jamming piece protruding through, top and bottom. All right, now that's done. I'm going to repeat the procedure on the other side signal. All right, let me clean off the table here and we'll go to the next step. So here you see me removing the Fender Eliminator license plate bracket from the rear of the bike. That just gets 2 fasteners taken out and the whole thing comes off. And now I'll show you how to reconfigure this to include this in there. I'm gonna grab a 5mm Allen, remove the screws that hold your license plate bracket to the carrier boss. For the adjustable version you see here, we go from the top. The other version that is a standard version, the fasteners on the bottom, very similar technique, just slightly different end pieces. I'm gonna remove the screws that hold the license plate bracket to the boss, put them to the side. This bracket in its kit comes with new screws that are included for the extra length that is necessary. And we're just basically going to sandwich this bracket along with the signals in between the license plate bracket and the carrier boss. It's very simple. Now in the installation of our Fender Eliminator, I used Loctite, a medium thread locking agent on these screws. There are still some residues of that thread lock in my threads in the hinge bosses. If you are just mounting this fresh, make sure that you apply a little bit of thread locking compound on these screws that go through here. This will prevent losing your components down the road due to vibration. All right, Once you have your screws threaded up, make sure that the bracket and the signals are centered about the center plane of this assembly. And then you can go ahead and tighten this down. Once you tighten this down, this is pretty much ready to go back on the bike. Let's grab the hardware that mounts this to the bike and hop on over, show you how to get that mounted. Okay, back on the bike, we will superimpose all these components on their mounting locations. Find a good angle for this tool to go through. This video really instructs how to install signals on. If you need more help with how to install the Fender Eliminator components, please watch those videos first. All right, so now our assembly is here. Remember, you are 6 millimeters lower here on your license plate mount. If you were running a pretty tight angle that placed the bottom of your license plate closer to the wheel, let's maybe reassess that and make sure that during suspension travel, you don't hit your license plate. Let's get these to the inside now. We will need to loosen our closeout. If you are doing this as you're installing your Fender Eliminator, you obviously want to put these wires through before you put the closeout on, and that way you won't have to loosen it. To gain access to the closeout, we'll have to take off the seat latch plate. Again, that is captured in our Fender Eliminator video, so you can look at that, look at those steps there. Basically, if you're installing everything together, you'll just need to watch these two videos and combine those steps. We are going to remove those rear screws from this closeout altogether. Make sure that we have ample room to pass this plug through. And on the closeout itself, we do have these reliefs for running wires to the inside so that they don't get clamped up. That's how we will pass these wires through. Let's get the connectors in first and then position them appropriately.
Start it up.
All right, now that we have the wires passed through, everything's routed nicely, looking good. Let's replace the fasteners for the closeout and tighten them down all the way. All right, now up top here, we're presented with a little bit extra wire length because now we've shortened up where the signals live. I like to bunch them up like this, go under this loom and place them underneath this starter relay. That gets us closer to this area here where they're gonna connect, black to black, white to white. As long as you place them on the correct side of the signal bracket, you will have this scheme work out. All right, get them jammed under there so that everything's nice and neat. Looks factory here. In this area, there is a cable management clip here. I jammed this guy in on top of that. And look at that, beautiful, nice and neat. Let's give this a quick test, make sure that we have signal function. All right, we're looking good here. Let's put the seat latch plate back on. All right, that's that. License plate goes back on, bike's ready to ride. The following segment in this video will focus on how to install LED pod style signals on the rear of this bike. Signals that are aftermarket and do not have the same mounting features as the Yamaha signals do. They will require a mounting kit. For that purpose, we are using our pod signal mounting kit. All of these signals that we offer, and any signals you may find out on the market that have either a 10mm or an 8mm stud base, will fit with this. And if the signals terminate in 3.5mm male bullets like ours do, they will also take our harness converter for a plug-and-play connection. In this segment, we will focus on the physical installation on this location. We still have several different locations to show you. At the very end of this video, we'll show you how to electrically connect all the components to the bike inside. It's the same step for all these different versions of installation, so we'll just template it that way. For the purpose of our demonstration, I've chosen the BL6 signal because it's the most commonly purchased pod signal that we sell, and it also looks very nice on this bike, so this is what we're going to use. Let's unravel it and make sure that the signal has enough length to go from here to the inside. Yes, it does, so we do not have to pre-configure it with the harness converter. We could do that inside the trunk. Okay, here I have the right side signal, the way I know it's the right signal. The half round feature up here in the lens points to the top, and our TST Industries logo is upright. It'll mount roughly like this. We will need to remove the nut and the washer and or washers, whatever the signal comes with. Again, like I said before, this is a common installation for all the signals that we sell. You'll be able to use these steps on any of the signals that we offer. In our pod signal mounting kit, we have several brackets and hardware. Let's just grab a bracket. All brackets are the same for both sides of the bike. I like to use the slot against the license plate bracket and then the hole for the signal. Technically, you could reverse that and have a little bit of adjustability here if that is necessary for your installation. For mine, I will go with this. So each step of the way, I just check and make sure I have the right orientation, and in fact I do. Now I'm gonna get my washers and nut on these wires. So flat washer goes onto the connectors first. And we have a split washer that accomplishes the locking of the nut against these components, and then the nut. And I will get this lightly tightened on here by hand, ensuring that I still have some adjustability left in this system. If you do tighten it without centering it, it'll likely come off axis a little bit. So here we go. This will look pretty good. Now it's time to grab the hardware that came with our kit. We have a bunch of washers, 2 of these screws, and 2 nuts. So we will need 1 nut and 1 screw for each side. And we have several washers. We actually are given 6 washers. For the thicker license plate brackets, like our aluminum Elite 1 version, we'll only need 2. For a thinner version, the 3rd one per side is required for making up the distance on the screw. So, license plate, washer, screw through that. Then we go through our license plate bracket. We get our assembly of L bracket and signal in place, and then we'll use the locking nut that we provide. You see these serrated washer ends here. That's called a kep nut. Those serrated ends go against our washer on the inside of this assembly. Just gonna get this screwed together by hand for now, and it's gonna look all droopy and sad, but we will refine that later as we get all the components in place. I'm gonna repeat the steps on the opposite side of the bike, and then we'll tighten everything down.
Start it up.
Okay, now we'll need to make sure that everything is in the appropriate location that we like it in. Everything is hanging level, straight, balanced to your liking. I like to have symmetry from side to side, so that's what I'm going for here. I start tightening down by hand first without a tool on each side. I have a 4mm going from the outside, 4mm Allen, 10mm box wrench or socket from the inside. We're not going to stoop to that just yet. Let's go ahead and make sure that our signals will fire parallel to the ground. Now I'll grab a 12mm open-ended wrench and start tightening down on these connections, making sure that everything remains level, straight, and to my liking, and that signal will actually fire along the ground. Once again, the connections on these components are such that you end up preloading this rubber component here. You actually don't reach hard bottom. If you look for hard bottom on these signals, what'll happen is you'll end up ripping the metal component out of the stud. So now make sure that you're not overstressing this connection. You just want to make sure you have enough preload on that rubber boot, and that will keep it from spinning off with vibration. If it ever were to spin off, it's not that big of a concern because everything's connected to the bike, so you won't actually lose it. It'll just dangle and then you'll have to reconnect it, but that's not a big deal. All right, now let's grab our 4mm Allen, 10mm box wrench, finish tightening down on this connection and this connection. Now everything's tight, everything's level, everything's to my liking. I will run these wires to the inside. I like to keep track which one's right, which one's left for ease of connection. I already showed the next step in the previous segment in this video where I was running signal connectors to the inside via removal of the seat latch plate and also loosening of our closeout. So I won't be repeating the demonstration. If you guys need that tip, back up a couple of minutes in this video and you'll see. All right, I have one set of wires on the inside that will go through the notches in my closeout. And then the other side is run to the inside through the notches in the closeout. All my wires are in here, so the rest of the steps here for the tightening of the undertail closeout have been demonstrated in the previous segment in this video, so I'm not going to go over that. The actual wiring is the same for all the signal types that we sell and the subsequent versions of installation I'm going to show you. So we will show one instance of how to wire these up at the very end. I'm going to take this apart and show you the next version. The previous portrayed installation methodologies focused around the rear mount fender eliminator. Now we're going to transition over to what to do about signaling when you've purchased and installed the low mount fender eliminator. Again, our choices will be these signals from TST Industries. If you have another signal system that you like, the mounting system that I will show you will also work for that application. First, I have a method here that will use our pod signal mounting kit without the use of the hardware that is provided. We will back out this screw here and clamp this bracket between the screw and the grommet. This will not be a hard mount, but it provides enough friction that this will not turn on you and it'll stay in location. So you couple that up with one of these signals or one of our AROs or the popular BL6. Now this keeps the signal at this level and then also decently inboard so that kicking your leg over, getting on the bike will not be an issue most of the time, but you do have to keep in mind that you do have a signal here and somebody riding as passenger will have their leg here in this area. They may make contact, so I would advise you to tread lightly and experiment with different locations and choose what's best for you. Now the other option I will be showing you is how to mount one of these signals in here. Now this only works for an 8mm M8 thread stud. It has to be a 8mm by 1.25mm thread pitch thread goes in here. I recommend if you're gonna go with this location, you only use this signal. These guys are a little bit longer and they do stick out quite a bit. You will have interference there, you may kick it off, but that's up to you. Now, I know somebody's gonna ask, Bart, why don't you mount it here? Where there's less interference, it's more visible. Well, this is a through hole under this screw, and this is a blind hole that is capped off on the inside. Technically, you can use a 7/32 drill to drill through without harming the threads. I don't really want to portray that. The guys who know how to do that will do that. I don't really want to require our customers to go through those steps and possibly break their subframe, render it unusable. I don't want to be it. All right, so let's start with this location. We will need a 4mm Allen to undo this screw. For the next several methods, I will just be doing one side because the other side is exactly the same. You just mirror the steps on the left side of the bike. These screws in here do have a shoulder. So what we'll do is feed that shoulder through the slotted section and then get that threaded back in. Now I'll probably do a final tightening here after getting my signal on. That way I make sure that it's perpendicular to the center plane of the bike with the signal on. But for now, I'll just tighten it up a good bit just to show you guys that with all the friction exerted on this system, it's not going anywhere under the weight of just the signal. Now, since we are going to be using a choice of signal here, maybe I'll once again demonstrate on our BL6 because it is really the most prevalent signal that we sell. Same procedure as on the rear mount here. Remove the washers, feed through the bracket, replace the washers and nut, tighten down, and then we'll talk about routing. And this method does enable you to have a signaling system here along with the low mount Fender Eliminator. Early on in the age of this model, we are basically providing a pod signal system for the rear. We will be providing a integrated taillight sometime soon. That's to come. For now, we're just focusing on getting some kind of signals back on here. 12mm open-ended wrench tightens this up. I want to adjust it so that it's actually firing parallel to the ground. That looks pretty good. Again, you want to engage this thread enough so that you preload the rubber, but do not exert too much force on this connection. Now, we'll have to route this to the inside of the bike. Now, this is pretty simple. Right here, there's a split just above the hardware for the license plate. There's a split between the undertail and the subframe. You can feed your wires up through here. Requires a little bit of patience because it's tight in there. And now you will have access to them up here from the trunk compartment. You can see They came out here. At the very end of this video, I will show you how to hook that up electrically. That's pretty much it here. I advise people to forward this sheath all the way to the signal lamp. That way you have coverage of black material through and through. It'll look a little bit better, but you have to consider the fact that this hardware will be shown and this wire here will be shown. So that is one of those things that you have to consider before you go ahead and make that choice of which system to purchase. Choice is yours. We just show you how it's done. All right, we're gonna dismount this and show you how to go about putting a signal in here. All right, you guys, I have one more physical installation method before we go into wiring, and that is how to get our echo signals installed in place of this bolt. Now, if you're running your luggage rack, probably won't work for you, or any other accessory that screws into here, but if you have these unoccupied, it's a good place to put a signal. Now, these signals come by default with a silver ring. If you care to change that to an accent color, kind of like what I have done here, quick method for that is you unscrew this cap. You will have to have a handy needle or some kind of a safety pin or something that you remove an O-ring with. Remove the ring. If for some reason the lens comes out on you, you will have to replace that. Then install the ring of your choice, followed by replacement of the O-ring. Make sure you don't damage this O-ring. That's what keeps your signal watertight. And then you get your cap screwed back on and make sure you get that muscled on pretty good. Simple as that. Now, I've already done it to these signals, so we're just gonna go ahead and use these. Let's take off the nut along with the washer. We'll ditch the washer, put the nut back on. We are going to use the nut in a slightly different fashion than in previous installations. The nut will spin on pretty much all the way, and then we will spin this in place of this threaded, in place of this screw here, and then back this against the frame and the washer, and that will jam it in place. All right, let's go ahead and remove this screw. 5mm Allen does that really well. Now this does come off with a washer. It's a black zinc plated washer. We are going to retain that in place. We are going to feed the wires in one at a time from the outside to the inside, making sure that you grab them as they come through. Once you get both of these bullet connectors through, advance the outer wiring to the inside. Now this is going to be fairly important here, so please pay attention. We are going to have to turn this entire lamp along with the wiring as we screw it in. Make sure that the inside wiring doesn't get too bunched up and twisted. You don't want any more than one full twist on that wiring at any point. So go nice and slow. If you do twist it up too much, you run the risk of twisting it up all the way inside to the circuit, twisting up the wire and ripping off the soldered connections, and then that will void your warranty. And that's physical damage that is caused by improper installation. All right, when we get close to the end here, you'll notice we could possibly go half a turn more and then we can't go anymore. So we're gonna back off here, grab a 12mm open-ended wrench, and now turn the nut towards the frame. There's the key. I have a pretty narrow open-ended wrench here that actually fits in there. If your wrench does not fit under the stalk of the signal, you'll have to back it out one full turn and then make that installation the same way I'm showing you here. or you could go out and buy a more narrow open-ended wrench, whichever one you prefer, but that is the key to success here. Now, I have this pretty level. I think what I want to do is point it up just slightly, so I'm going to loosen it up a little bit more. Obviously, you want to fire kind of close to the axis, parallel to the ground, perhaps on a slight up angle. Choice is really yours. All right, that looks good. Now, that's pretty much it for this installation. I would do the same thing on the other side, but since it's the same, I'm gonna skip the theatrics here and go straight to wiring. Now, whether you've installed your signal on the rear mount, front mount, or any other locations, whether the signals are ours or another company's and terminated in 3.5 millimeter bullets, the only difference really is where they're gonna exit into this compartment. Now, I have the more front mounted version here, so they exit from here. The rear mounted would exit from here. Just have to get them connected now. So we have our harness connectors specific to the late model Yamahas in the rear, and our signal connectors are here. Let's go one by one. This is very simple. We observed during disassembly that white was right signal. So we are going to start with the right, yellow to yellow, black to black here. If you're using some other company's signal lamps, this may differ, but yellow on our systems is the positive and black is the ground. Now, you see here we have little insulating caps. They do tend to have the ability to slide off. So what I'm gonna do is lock them in place with a piece of tape. I do like to start with the positive. You can always take the tape off if you ever need to disassemble this system, but this just ensures that you don't cause a short circuit here. Also prevents water from getting in there, and it's just good all around. If you don't have electrical tape, I strongly suggest you go get some, or at least zip tie it in a way that prevents those guys from sliding around. All right, here we go, nice and neat. White is right. So this is the right side. I will plug it in to the white connector, and then bulk distribution will involve getting that wire out of the way and clamped in by other wires so that we don't have it sliding around. And there it is, that's pretty good. I'm gonna test it before I go any further. And in fact, we have signal function. I'm gonna repeat the steps on the other side.
This is lit.
All right, guys, this was a long video. Sorry about that, but I wanted to accomplish getting you all the information that you may need for whichever signaling version you choose. I hope I accomplished that. If I did, give me a thumbs up, give me a subscribe. If I didn't, let me know how I can improve it in the future. Hopefully, you will check out tstindustries.com where you can pick up these parts, some other parts for this bike, other bikes in your stable. For now, I just want to sign off and go drink a coffee. Thank you for watching. Ride safe. Peace.